Okay, hi kids! How are you today? Are you fine? Well, if you're fine, that's very good and that's okay. Because after going through with this lesson, you are expected to A. Describe the different modes of reproduction in flowering and non-flowering plants such as moss, mongo, fern, and others. B. Identify the different modes of reproduction in flowering and non-flowering plants. And letter C. Describe each mode of reproduction in flowering and non-flowering plants. So, before we proceed to our topic, let's roam around and see a beautiful garden and describe each flower. Okay, so these are the different kinds of plants. So that's it. Kids, the different kinds of flowering and non-flowering plants. Okay, kids, these are the different kinds of plants. Here we go. Okay, come on and another group of plants. There you go. Plants. Beautiful plants. That's it. Here, another plants. Okay, kids, thank you very much for being behaved in the garden. So this time, you are going to answer the following questions. Are you ready, kids? Okay, question. How did you feel earlier when we were in the garden? Huh? How did you feel? Okay, happy. Very good. How about you? Huh? Amazed of those plants. You felt amazed. Okay. Okay, so kids, your answers are all very good. All correct. So when we said plants, flowering and non-flowering plants. So this part of our lesson today, plants reproduction. Now, there are two types of plants, the flowering and the non-flowering plants. So as you said a while ago, you observed that plants having those flowers and plants don't have flowers at all. So these plants differ in their modes of reproduction. Now, there are two types of reproduction in the plants. So flowering plants do sexual reproduction, while non-flowering plants do asexual reproduction. And so, sexual and asexual have a lot of differences in the terms on type of reproduction, but they both produce offspring, right? So, let's tackle that one a while ago. And maybe you're wondering why I'm having this thing in my hand. It's because I have something to hold. Okay, you really want to know what those things that I'm gonna hold? Okay, so are you ready? This time, we're going to answer again another activity. I'm going to hold something and you answer. Is it a flowering plant or belong to a non-flowering plant? Okay, first, I have here...
Wow!
Okay, this one, a very beautiful plant. What do you call this plant? This is fern. Everybody say it. Fern. Very good. A very beautiful plant. So, this is the reason why I'm having this thing. Okay. So, what kind of plant? Again, this one. A fern. It is... for you, is it belong to a flowering plants or a non-flowering plants? Okay, if you answer a non-flowering plants, you've got check. Okay, next. Okay. Next flower, okay, is rose. Okay, a rose, a flowering plant or belong to a non-flowering plant? Your answer is flowering plants. Check. Okay, next thing. Next flower. Okay, is a moss. I'm holding now a moss. Flowering plants or a non-flowering plants? Okay, if you answer a non-flowering plants, moss belong to a non-flowering plants, then it is correct. Very good. Okay, next. Okay, what is this? This kind of plant is a pine tree. Now, is it flowering plants or a non-flowering plants? Yes. If you answer pine tree belong to a non-flowering plant, then you are check. Okay, very good. Next, a daisy, a very beautiful daisy. Is it flowering plants or a non-flowering plants? Okay, so you answer daisy is a flowering plant. Check. Very good. Next, I have here a fungi. Fungi, fungi, fungi. Is it a flowering plant or a non-flowering plant? If you answer fungi is a non-flowering plant, then you are check. Okay. Next, we have here kind of plant which is hibiscus. 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 Okay, belongs to a flowering plant or a non-flowering plant? Oh.
Wow!
What's your answer again? It is a flowering plant. Check. Okay. Okay, next is a sunflower. Sunflower, sunflower. Is it flowering plants or a non-flowering plants? Okay, sunflower. If you answer flowering plants, then you are check. Okay, very good. Okay, so at this point, what are you gonna do now is to listen a short conversation with the two friends, Winnie and Nina, in the garden and how they discover plants to reproduce. Now, take down some important words because afterwards we're going to discuss it. So get your ball pen now and a sheet of paper. Okay, are you ready? So sit back, relax, and listen very carefully. Are you excited? Me too. Okay, so let's start now.
I'm really wondering how my plants grow.
I'm going to tell you something, Winnie.
What is it?
There are two modes on how plants reproduce.
Then, what are those?
Through sexual and asexual reproduction.
Can you tell me more about it?
Flowering plants reproduce sexually.
How about the non-flowering plants, like ferns?
They reproduce asexually.
Thank you, Mina. I learned a lot from you.
You're welcome, Winnie. What is it? Okay, mode of plants reproduction. Here we go. Do you know the two modes on how plants reproduce? Sexual and asexual, sexual and asexual, sexual and asexual, and now you know the two modes. Okay, you like the song? Okay, again. Do you know the two modes on how plants reproduce? Sexual and asexual, sexual and asexual, sexual and asexual, and now you know the two modes. Okay, so sexual reproduction and sexual reproduction, new plants are obtained from seeds. Okay, sexual reproduction is a type of reproduction that involved two parents in order to produce an offspring. Now, so the fertilization in the flower begins with pollination, the transfer of pollen from a stamen to the stigma of another flower. Pollination may occur with the help of insects, other animals, wind, or water. There are two kinds of pollination, the self and the cross-pollination. Now, self-pollination is occur when pollen grains transfer from the anther to the stigma of a flower of the same flower or of another flower on the same plant. Okay, that is what we call self-pollination. What is cross-pollination? Now, cross-pollination occur when pollen grains transfer from the anther to the stigma of a flower to another plant. So that is cross-pollination, transfer of a flower to another plant. Did you get it? When the pollen grain lands on the stigma, then the tube cell produces a pollen tube through a style into the ovule. The two male gametes travel along with the tube nucleus through the pollen tube. After they reach the ovule, one male gamete fertilizes the egg and becomes embryo, and the other one becomes the endosperm, the food for the embryo. This whole process is called double fertilization. After the process of fertilization, the ovule becomes the seed. Asexual reproduction. Now, in asexual reproduction, plants can give rise to new plants without seeds. Asexual reproduction is a type of reproduction that requires one parent in order to produce an offspring. Now, we have natural vegetative reproduction. It's a process by which structural modification is done on the stem, root, or leaf, thus produces a new plant from its parent plant. Another process that is common for fungi, moss, and ferns is a spore formation. Spores are light and can be easily dispersed by wind from one place to another. The spore germinates into new plants as they land on the environment. Okay? So that is asexual reproduction. Now, in a natural vegetative reproduction, as part of asexual reproduction, we have runners, bulbs, and tubers. So there are three types of natural vegetative reproduction. So, runners. Some plants have stems that arc over to touch the ground, and that stems produce their own roots and leaves, and they become a new plant. So that is runners. And we have bulbs. It stores nutrients for the plants. Plants can grow by simply taking one bulb from a plant and planting it. Just like, for example, the onions, garlic, and lilies are from bulbs. Okay? Next, tubers, the letter C. Tubers, just like, for example, potatoes, are tubers that has a tiny buds called eyes. So, potatoes can be cut into pieces, and each cut has one eye. Then each eye will turn into a shoot that grows upward through the oil surface. So, some types of artificial asexual reproduction, we have cutting, layering, marcoting, budding, and grafting. So that's it. Part of asexual reproduction. Okay, kids? Do you understand? Okay, very good. Okay, so what's more? What have you learned? Okay, so you have already learned and understand the topic about the different modes of reproduction. So in flowering and non-flowering plants. So this time, let us check your understanding regarding the lesson. So you're going to match the ways of which the plants are reproduced in column A to the plant in column B. Are you ready? Okay, in column A, we have from bulbs, number 2, from leaves, number 3, from seeds, number 4, from spores, and number 5, from stem cuttings. And for the letter B, we have cassava, B, corn, C, ferns, D, katakataka, and letter E, onion. So you're going to match it up. Now, for number 1, let's go back to number 1, from bulbs. If you answer letter E, onion, then you are correct. Check. How about from the leaves? Okay. If you answer letter D, katakataka, well, it's still correct. Okay. Now, let's proceed to number 3. From seeds. What's your answer? Letter B, corn. And you are check. Okay. Number 4, from spores. Your answer is letter. If you answer letter C, a check. A very, very big check. And for number 5, from stem cuttings. And your answer is letter. If you answer letter A, check. Very good, children. You are very, very good. Okay. So now, let's begin. We have Mongo on the first column, and the type of reproduction is sexual, and ways to reproduce is seeds. Now, next is the peanut. Peanut, if you answer sexual, check. And that is under ways to reproduce, natural vegetative reproduction, it is seeds. Check. Okay, number 3 is we have moss. It is, the answer is asexual reproduction. Very good. It is under ways to reproduce, a natural vegetative reproduction, and it is spores. Check. We have number 4, mango. Okay, mango is what? Very good. It can be sexual reproduction. It is coming from the seeds, ways to reproduce, or could be an asexual reproduction, check. And it is artificial asexual reproduction, the stems. It is grafting. Very good. So in mango, there are 2 types of reproduction. Can be asexual and sexual. Okay, very good. Next, how about ginger? Okay, ginger is sexual reproduction. It is ways to reproduce is the natural vegetative reproduction and rhizomes. Ways to reproduce is rhizomes. And the last one we have lily. Okay, lily is under in asexual reproduction. It is ways to reproduce. If you answer natural vegetative reproduction, bulbed. Okay, check. Okay, kids, congratulations for a good job. Very good. And now, this time, let's proceed to the assessment. The multiple choice. Choose the letter of the best answer. Write the chosen letter on a separate sheet of paper. Number 1. What are the two modes of reproduction in plants? What are the two modes of reproduction in plants? A. Fertilization and photosynthesis. B. Sexual and asexual reproduction. C. Asexual reproduction and fertilization. Or letter D. Sexual reproduction and photosynthesis. Now, if your answer is letter B, check. Sexual and asexual reproduction. Let's proceed to number 2. Number 2, what mode of reproduction does a flowering plant do? Number 2, what mode of reproduction does a flowering plant do? A. Budding. B. Cloning. C. Sexual reproduction. D. Asexual reproduction. If your answer is letter C, sexual reproduction, correct. Okay. Now let's proceed to number 3. Number 3, which of the following plants is grown from bulbed? Which of the following plants is grown from bulbed? Choices. A. Bamboo. B. Ginger. C. Onion. D. Potato. If you answer C. Onion, check. Now let's proceed to number 4. Which is an example of a way plants reproduce asexually? Number 4, which is an example of a way plants reproduce asexually? A. Bulbs. B. Rhizomes. C. Tubers. D. All of the above. If you answer letter D, all of the above, check. Okay, let's proceed to number 5. What type of reproduction occurs when a carrot is placed in water and begins growing roots and leaves? Number 5. What type of reproduction occurs when a carrot is placed in water and begins growing roots and leaves? A. Budding. B. Cloning. C. Sexual reproduction. D. Asexual reproduction. If you answer letter D, asexual reproduction, correct. Okay, so let's proceed now to number 6. Number 6 is, how do strawberries reproduce asexually? How do strawberries reproduce asexually? A. Strawberries use seeds. B. Strawberries form tubers and grow new plants. C. Strawberries grow into bulbs and new plants emerge. Or letter D. Strawberries extend runners and produce new plants. Now, if you answer letter D, strawberries extend runners and produce new plants, check. Now for number 7. How do butterflies help in pollination? They help by blank. How do butterflies help in pollination? They help by blank. A. Eating the pollen. B. Carrying the nectar. C. Scattering the petals and the leaves. Letter D. Carrying the pollen from one flower to another. If you answer letter D is check. Carrying the pollen from one flower to another. Now number 8. A stem cutting of an alubati plant was planted in a pot. Weeks later, The cutting roots and began to grow into a new alugbati plant, which process led to the formation of the new alugbati plant. A stem cutting of an alugbati plant was planted in a pot. Weeks later, the cutting grew roots and began to grow into a new alugbati plant, which process led to the formation of the new alugbati plant. A. Photosynthesis. B. Seed germination. C. Sexual reproduction. D. Asexual reproduction. If you answer letter D, correct. That is asexual reproduction. Now let's proceed to number 9. Number 9. Which of the following best describes a method of sexual propagation in plants? Which of the following best describes a method of sexual propagation in plants? A. Roots of a plant are cut and replanted. B. Flowers from a mango plant are pollinated and produce seeds. C. A runner from a strawberry plant produces an identical offspring. D. A potato cut into a dice with one eye and planted in the ground. Now, if your answer is letter B, flowers from a mango plant are pollinated and produce seeds. The answer is check. Let's proceed to number 10. What is the difference between sexual and asexual reproduction? What is the difference between sexual and asexual reproduction? A. Sexual reproduction is faster than asexual. B. Sexual and asexual reproduction are just the same. C. Sexual reproduction requires stem, while asexual requires seeds. And letter D. Sexual reproduction requires seeds, while asexual propagates without seeds. Now, if your answer is letter D, sexual reproduction requires seeds, while sexual propagates without seeds. Correct. So, this time, kids, we have additional activities. Kids, are you still there? Because I'm still here. Now, in this activity, you are going to write 5 important things that you have learned from the lesson. Different modes of reproduction in plants. Now, at the center, what I learned, and write your answer provided. Okay? So, good luck, kids. Enjoy and have fun in learning. Okay, so kids, my dear learners,